I now call upon Dr. Pramod Jaiswal to introduce the event. All yours, sir. Thank you.
Lieutenant General Sudhir Sharma, Chairman of MitKat Advisory, Mr. Ram Prasad Subedi, Deputy Chief of Mission, Nepal Embassy, New Delhi, Mr. Shekhar Golcha, President of Federation of Nepalese Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Karan Chaudhary, Executive Director, CG Holdings, Mr. Amlan Mukherjee, Managing Director and CEO, Unilever Nepal Limited, Ambassador Ranjit Rai, former Indian Ambassador to Nepal, Ambassador Dr. Shambhuram Singh Khada, former Nepalese Ambassador to UN and Geneva and Professor at Tribhuvan University, Ms. Vidya Kumar, Chief Financial Officer, Standard Chartered Bank, Nepal, Harkirant Singh Bedi, Business Head, Nepal and Myanmar, Dabur, distinguished participants, friends from media, ladies and gentlemen. Namaste and good afternoon. First of all, I, on behalf of MitKat and NICE, would like to welcome you all at today's panel discussion on Nepal as a business destination, risk and reward, which will be followed by the release of Nepal Risk Review 2022. MitKat Advisory Services Private Limited is a global provider of integrated security and risk mitigation solutions that enable corporates, government departments, and NGOs to enhance safety and security of workforce, information, assets, and brand. The company offers a variety of risk assessment and management services and tech-enabled solutions to de-risk business and facilitate operations in violent environment by providing corporate threat intelligence and also country entry support for business looking to begin operations in a particular country. MitKat has had the experience of operating in challenging environments such as Iraq, Myanmar, Bangladesh, Nepal, Africa, and more. Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and Engagement is an independent, apolitical, and non-partisan think tank based in Kathmandu that undertake independent research and activities on issues of international relations, foreign policy, security studies, and issue of development. Major research area of NICE are issues related to foreign policy, security, strategy, economy, cyber security, migration, disaster management, climate change, and energy. Journal for Security and International Studies is a NICE flagship peer-reviewed journal. It also publishes newsletter, research papers, commentaries, monographs, and books regularly. Nepal in the last 10 to 15 years has witnessed a series of political uphills. Nepal's contemporary political history has been shaped by recurring episodes of mass mobilization and anti-regime contentions. The transition from autocratic monarchy to a pro-democratic people's movement has declared Nepal as a federal democratic republic, institutionalized by the Constitution of Nepal, promulgated through Constituent Assembly in 2015. This transition has thus exposed Nepal to various economic and political reforms. Being a rising South Asian economy, Nepal is booming as a destination of global investment. From the tourism sector to a hydropower industry, the nation is playing a crucial role and is gradually developing into a prominent player in the region. Nepal was ranked 94 out of 190 economies on the Doing Business 2020 ranking, marking a significant shift for the country into top 100 economies on the ease of doing business. There has been significant improvement in infrastructure. In the next 5 years, Nepal will be graduating from the LDC status, and there has been a decreasing trend in general strikes or Nepal Bandh and violent protests that used to be quite rampant earlier. However, the business environment is also affected by political uncertainties, natural hazards, lack of adequate infrastructure, and other such risks. And that is what the study highlights on. The objective of the Nepal Risk Review 2020, a jointly prepared annual report by MitKat Advisory and NICE Nepal, is to introduce Nepal as a favorite destination for investment as Nepal's growing young population and rising middle class makes it an interesting destination to explore new markets and opportunities for new and better business and services and explore the risk associated with them. The report will be useful for investors who look for new potential market and the government who need to address the problem faced by the investors. We hope to receive your feedback on the report so that we can make changes as per your suggestions at the next issue. I once again welcome you all for a kind presence. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jaiswal. We will now move to our keynote address. I call upon Lieutenant General Sudhir Sharma, Chairman of MitKat Advisory, to deliver his keynote address. Sir, I think we continue. Yeah.
Thank you, Radhika. Excellencies, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great privilege for MitKat to partner with NICE to do this webinar on the macroeconomics of Nepal and the investment climate therein. First of all, before I start, I would like to bring to your attention that it also happens to be that Nepal is celebrating its Constitution Day. I did so yesterday, and therefore, I would like to extend to all people of Nepal and all the well-wishers of Nepal and lots of good wishes on the Constitution Day, which fell upon this 19th of September. I'm happy to note that a large number of international dignitaries and heads of states have sent greetings to Nepal on this very, very important day. And the Prime Minister of Nepal himself has said that he hopes that the implementation of the Constitution brings prosperity and happiness to the entire nation of Nepal. And with that, I'd like to bring about that I hope that this Constitution, though it has got some issues which are causing some concern to some people, becomes a rallying point and becomes the area of consensus for all political parties as can use this Constitution to move forward. Because in a federal structure, Constitution is the holy grail on which everything moves. You're all aware that Nepal has been going through a bit of a political churn in the past decade. Lots of things have been happening, but I think if you look at it, it's par for the course. After moving from a unitary government to a parliamentary federal democracy, if you recall the events in Europe, when they went through the same process, decades and decades of problems took place, where revolution was taking place. And therefore, I think in a nascent democracy, which is reaching out to the grassroots, it would be expected a certain amount of upheaval and churn in political class can take place, provided it ends towards a building of a robust consensus and we can go on politically. And I hope that will happen. I can see some light at the end of the tunnel, and I hope that continues for time. So besides geopolitics, because of the COVID, I think the economic situation of Nepal was very badly hit. And that is logical because it was so dependent upon tourism as one of its key pillars of economic reform. And that was hit hardest. I'm happy to note that they've been able to manage it themselves, and we seem to be getting out of the COVID situation of Nepal. So while geopolitics and geoeconomics have been in a state of flux and dynamic, the geostrategic importance of Nepal has always been steady, stationary, and very important. Even today, that is still stable. China, India, being its two borders, neighboring countries were so big, and Bangladesh is trading partners. All three have got great interest in the geostrategic stability of Nepal. Even countries like the United States of America look upon Nepal as one of their pillars as they move into the so-called Indo-Pacific strategy. Nepal may not be too happy with that, but they're important enough to find mention in the US scheme of things. So that is something which you have to keep in mind. Now, Nepal has played a very important role in the regional formations of SAARC, SAFTA, BIMSTEC. So it is a very mature democracy. So I would like to say that despite the competing powers like China, US, Bangladesh, India looking for influence in Nepal, it is for Nepal themselves to make sure that their own national interests are best served which way. That is paramount. And we hope that they are co-terminus, that all countries together can do something that it becomes in the national interest of Nepal itself and is not, divergent to it. I feel that Nepal is actually sitting at the crossroads of history. It has its test for destiny to start now because its political system is not stabilizing. It's got a constitution in place. The world's globalization is taking place. COVID is over, and a rapid development is taking place around the world. And that can only bode well for Nepal because once it builds infrastructure, tourism can take place and can start becoming exporting economy, wherein people will not start migrating from Nepal and jobs will be created inside it. Provided they create the infrastructure and do so. They've taken some very good steps. I've seen some of their rules they've formed of FITA where they've allowed, foreign investment. They've also done the public-private partnership. So lots of things are on course. And I hope that this will continue and Nepal becomes an important destination for development, for investment, for FDI, and people come in and build because this nation deserves to be where it is. It's something which has got tremendous goodwill. We need to translate that into good business in coming into Nepal. With that, I end my speech with saying, I am very bullish about Nepal. We in MitKat are very bullish about Nepal, and we feel that with few things to be straightened out, Nepal can in fact become a very important country and become prosperous and find its place among the community of nations which deserves to be there after this change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. We will now have the keynote address by Mr. Ram Prasad Subirti, who is the Deputy Chief of Mission at the Embassy of Nepal in New Delhi.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Radhika. I enjoyed, in fact, listening to General Sharma and before that to Dr. Jaiswal. Let me begin by extending my greetings to Ambassador Ray and other distinguished panelists and ladies and gentlemen, whoever had joined this webinar. Namaskar. I'm very, very happy to join you this afternoon and to share with you some of my thoughts on Nepal as a business destination, risk and rewards. The organizer, MitKat and NICE deserve our deepest appreciation for hosting this webinar on such a befitting and timely topic and actually inviting me to speak. Nepal-India relations do not need an elaborate introduction. They are historical, time-tested, unique, deep, and diverse. Our two peoples living side by side in peace and harmony, sharing similar socio-cultural ethos across the open border for centuries, have remained the real custodian of our bilateral relations. There is enormous goodwill and political understanding between our two countries. But however, I'm not happy with the level of economic engagement. Nepal-India economic figures, trade, investment, tourism statistics do not in fact match with the level of political, socio-cultural, people-to-people relations. There is huge space for the economic leaders, business community to come and play. And in Nepal, I see more rewards than risk for the business community. I have seen prominent business people having long tradition of the family trade and investment in Nepal. I'm very much inspired by the passion these people carry. The business families, the houses that have been rolling the wheel of economy from generations to generation, giving momentum to the economy, creating opportunities and catering to the demands of Nepali market, which I often say a good niche market for Indian business community. We should build on this base. This is very strong base, in fact. And we need to widen the sphere and the diversity of our engagement, particularly in trade and investment. We all are aware of the fact that COVID-19 has hit the world economy, and we are no exception. But we have still a huge room to revive our economy. Let me just cite two publications. One, UNCTAD World Investment Report, and another World Bank's Doing Business Report, which Dr. Jaiswal also mentioned just before. If you see these reports, you will see first report, that UNCTAD World Investment Report, you will see a sharp decline in investment in Nepal, particularly FDI, which was $185 million in year 2019, and it fell down to $126 million. That is 32%, decline. And despite we have good, if you see the South Asian average, we are good. If we see in terms of transaction transparency, we are better, far better. If you see the shareholders' powers, we are doing good. And if you see the tax regime, it is lowest. We have lowest corporate tax in South Asia. And similarly, if you see the Doing Business Report 2020, you will see a kind of comparable business environment. We have a comparable business environment, if not better, than India. And we are, above average in terms of, South Asian, if you see the South Asian economy, particularly in terms of setting business, dealing with construction permits, or getting electricity, getting credits, or trading access across the border, paying taxes or enforcing contracts. These are just, some instances, some statistics. You know far better than this. You have been doing business, and many of you, particularly Golchaji, has been, pioneer business person. He knows the nuances and, difficulty in doing business in Nepal. But these facts speak clearly that the rewards outweigh the risk for the business people, trader, investors, whoever in Nepal. And these figures also talk about the attractiveness of Nepal as a business destination. Ladies and gentlemen, overall, the business climate in Nepal has remained attractive because we have done, a couple of homework, particularly robust legal infrastructure, institutional setup, and some kind of procedural clarity is there to do, start business. And I hope the MitKat and NICE, they have done good work, and the Nepal Risk Review 2020 will elaborate more on this, which is going to be released today, soon after this program. The COVID-19 has disrupted the investment ecology. It has severely broken the supply chains. We have to be, ready to reestablish the business network and adapt to this kind of business environment. The difficulties are there. However, I see there are, conventional areas such as hydropower, medicinal and healthcare and wellness industry, tourism, particularly ecotourism, trekking and adventure. These are, conventionally good areas. And I also see the areas such as organic farming, herbal medicine, transport infrastructure sector, ICT, financial intermediaries, health and education, telecom. These are the sectors that await Indian investment. And I look forward to hear more from you, particularly on this theme. And I'd like to conclude by extending my invitation to Indian business community to come and invest in Nepal. We are the most profitable and safe business destination, a familiar destination, a culturally, close country, a niche market with a very little risk and a lot more rewards. And I also urge the business community, please don't leave this opportunity unattended. Be the first to come and do business. You're most welcome in Nepal. Thank you very much. And I have a long list of the speaker I saw just now. I believe that I must listen to them to enlighten myself. Thank you very much, NICE and MitKat, for creating this opportunity and, giving us a chance to speak and encourage the business community to come to Nepal. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. That's extremely generous of you. And now I will call upon Colonel Sushil Pradhan, who is the Chief Operating Officer of MitKat Advisory. He will be moderating the panel discussion that we have so far. And sir, just to give you a heads up, I think we started 5 minutes late, so I'm sure you will make that up in your panel discussion.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Radhika. And very good afternoon. Namaskar to everyone. And it's been such a pleasure listening to the initially introduction speech by Dr. Pramod and the keynote speakers, Janil Sharma and Mr. Ramprasad Subedi. I think Mr. Ramprasad, you opened up so many new avenues of potential business in Nepal, which at least I had not heard about. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who would be willingly taking up those tips from you. And coming on to the panel discussion, I am really honored this afternoon to have a wonderful array of very distinguished, very experienced, and very eminent panelists. So before we move on to the session, I would just like to quickly introduce all of them to the audience. I would like to start with Mr. Shekho Golcha, who really needs no introduction actually in Nepal. He's one of the youngest presidents of the FNCCI, or the Federation of Nepalese Chamber of Commerce and Industry, which is the umbrella organization of the Nepalese Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And he's also the chairman of the Golcha Group, a pioneering industrial group in Nepal, which has a legacy of over 100 years now, operating over 100 companies within Nepal. So welcome to you, sir. Great to have you on this discussion. Next, we have Mr. Amlan Mukherjee, who's the managing director and CEO of Unilever Nepal Limited. And he has been responsible for the entire Unilever operation of the country after successfully completing his role as general manager for East India in Hindustan Unilever, after which he moved to Nepal. Very fortunate to have His Excellency Ambassador Ranjit Rai, former Indian ambassador to Nepal. He's an Indian diplomat with over 30 years of experience in the Indian Foreign Service. He's served as India's ambassador to Hungary, Vietnam, and Nepal. And very recently, Penguin has just published his book called Kathmandu Dilemma, Resetting India-Nepal Ties, which I'm sure would be something of great interest to this audience. We are fortunate to have with us also Ms. Vidya Kumar, who is the Chief Financial Officer of Stanchart Nepal. Prior to this, she was the business finance partner for retail banking and wealth management at Standard Chartered Bank in the UAE. She started her professional career with ICICI Bank in India and has also worked with JP Morgan India and has a career of over 19 years. So she is now working in Nepal, and welcome to you, Ms. Vidya. We have from the Chaudhary Group Holdings, we have the Executive Director, Mr. Karan Chaudhary, who's also the Vice President at Nepal Automobile Dealers Association. He looks after the affairs of other business under the Chaudhary Group Holdings, which include automobiles, hotels and resorts, education, realty, manufacturing, financial services, retail chains, and FMCG. From the Niti Foundation, we have the Executive Director, Mr. Mohandas Manandhar. He was the former policy advisor to the government of Nepal's National Inclusion Commission within the PMO's office, and has also been a visiting scholar at MIT, USA. He is the promoter and board member of Urja Developers with a portfolio of 335 megawatts comprised of 7 hydropower projects across Nepal. So welcome to you, sir. That is another dimension of Nepal that we really want to explore. And we have Mr. Harkirat Singh Bedi, who's the business head of Nepal and Myanmar for Dabur. I'm sure Dabur is a brand that needs no introduction to the people of India and Nepal. And he's been a long-standing pillar of Dabur and currently holds this profile in Nepal, worked in Dabur since 2012, where he started as the country manager in Nepal. And last but not the least, we have Ambassador Dr. Shambhu Ram Simkhada, who's a former diplomat and professor at Tribhuvan University in Nepal. He's also served as a member of the Secretariat of Special Committee chaired by the Prime Minister and its Technical Committee for the Supervision, Integration and Rehabilitation of the Maoist Army Combatants, which was really, I'm sure, a challenging job, sir. He is currently a professor at the Department of International Relations and Diplomacy, as well as Conflict, Peace and Development Studies at the Tribhuvan University, Kathmandu. So a very warm welcome to all of you, and I have the honor and privilege of asking some questions related to the business environment and the risk and reward environment in Nepal to all of you. And we shall have this discussion in a manner where we give about 5 minutes to each speaker for their initial questions. I have some additional questions which I may address to certain speakers as they come up, and the audience, I request you to please put your question and answers in the Q&A box. And if you want to ask a particular panelist a particular question, please make sure you mention that you want to address this question to that particular panelist, and then time permitting, we shall take on as many questions as possible. So I think we'll start with Dr. Shambhu. So all of us are reading in the news about the current political system, the upheaval, and what it means for Nepal's economic growth. So how has Nepal's transition to federalism from monarchy impacted the business environment in the country, and what lies ahead? If you could give us your thoughts on this.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm absolutely delighted to be participating in this program, and thank NIS and MitKat for adding a very important dimension to the what I have often described as the inseparable bonds of history and geography, culture and religion between Nepal and India. Now, to respond to your question in particular, it's a coincidence that only yesterday during the Constitution Day, my book, Triumph and Trauma of Transition, had just been published.
Congratulations, sir.
So that sort of gives you, of course, more of a political perspective of what has been the good side, the triumphant side of our political transition, but what has been a traumatic side. And one of the traumatic side, I must say, is in fact the necessity to transform the political change in the prosperity of the society and happiness of the people. That is where the big challenge is. And that challenge obviously offers a tremendous opportunity for the business and investment community, because Nepal is a large market in terms of its population. And of course, the purchasing capacity of the Nepali obviously is going up. And as a result, you see a potential for a large array of consumer investment. And I see that you have brought in Unilever, Dabur, and so on. They themselves and their books will show you how profitable it is to invest in Nepal. So that's one perspective. Of course, if these are, some of the issues that you heard, the hydropower, tourism, agriculture, especially organic and small size sort of variation because of the climate. And there are services, all kinds of possibilities are there. But one of the things that COVID, climate, and most recent situation in Afghanistan, my own perception is that what these three things have together challenged human intellect is, in fact, we have to rethink many of the assumptions on which we have based our theories and practices of politics, economics, diplomacy, and security. And that obviously challenges investment. So I would like to see, in fact, having been an ambassador to Switzerland, and in fact, the nature of the Swiss economy and nature of the Swiss geography. So my challenge to the investment community is to think innovatively and adaptively to create what I would call a clean and green economy and a healthy and happy society. And that opens a lot of sectors in the service area. For instance, in education, in the area of health. And when I talk about health, especially wellness and preventive sort of areas, because of Nepal's climatic advantages. Innovation and adaptation I talked about. And I see this tremendous opportunity because I see a greater integration of Nepalese and Indian economy. And of course, in a larger South Asian context, with Bangladesh. For instance, I was reading a news item that in fact, when India introduced the private railway system, it has tremendously transformed or has the potential to transform Nepali economy because it's primarily a high cost economy because of transportation, because of our landlocked nature. And that particular news item itself said that even on the first day that the private train brought goods from Haldia to our dry port, that in fact the other competitor has slashed the fare down by almost 40%. So that is the advantage of a bigger integration of the two sides, because we have at the moment, in the strength as well as the challenge of managing the India-Nepal relations is in fact politically, we are two independent sovereign nations. And yet in terms of society, in terms of economics, in terms of security, in terms of a whole range of other things, we are very closely interlinked with each other. And as a result, if we can only manage this side, then I see tremendous potential as some of the big Indian investments in Nepal have already demonstrated. Now, if you give me one more last point,
Sure.
I see that Ambassador Ray is here. Some years ago, an Indian think tank did a program in Kathmandu, an Indian think tank from Calcutta called the Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad Institute of Asian Studies. And they wanted to do a program on Nepal-India cooperation in water resources. And they invited me to do a paper. Of course, I'm not a hydropower specialist. So what I did was I brought in from our investment board, the man in charge of hydropower in the investment board. I called the board, the chairman of the investment board, in fact, the head of vice president, I think. And I said, look, I'm doing this. Can you give me your expert on hydropower? Because I've had this vision of a very transformative nature that in fact, always, in rainy, it just started raining now again. And the pandemic created by floods and landslides in between Nepal and India. Rains here, and then in Bihar and West Bengal and Uttar Pradesh, they get flooded. So I told this gentleman, look, I will present the political and diplomatic side of that paper. Now you look at the technical engineering and hydropower perspective from a vision that I had, that why do we not create together, India and Nepal, create 3 mega artificial lakes in the place where the 3 major rivers, from where 60 to 70% of the low, the summer discharge of the Ganges comes from. We create these mega lakes, which can cushion in the monsoon floods, and then link these along the India-Nepal border. India puts in, because of the size, 90% of the space and investment. Nepal puts in 10%, both land and investment. And so you create this, and of course, link them with canal, trains, electric trains on both sides. Then, of course, it will bring together a whole new economy of tourism, forestry, hydropower, and that will completely transform not only the economy on 2 sides, but it also ameliorate the continuous flooding and of course the problem of going and coming, etc. So with that, I would like to leave you, as you have this huge investors, as I'm seeing. So
thank you, Dr.
from a marginal everyday perspective, to a more futuristic, long-term, transformative thinking. This is contained in a book that is published by Matthias, and my paper is in that book. And this engineer, when I talked about this with other engineers, some said, well, this is not possible. Some said, yes, this is possible. But he came up with an idea of how to do it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shambhu.
I'm delighted you thought of me here.
Thank you. And that's a really interesting idea. I'm sure if we have time permitting, we will talk more about that. And we have Mr. Mohan Das on the panel later who will be talking about hydropower development as well. But for the time being, what I'll do is I'll move on to Ambassador Ranjit Rai. And well, India is just one of the major powers looking at Nepal. The second one, obviously, is China. And we also have the US. So, I just wanted to understand from you, sir, and how do you balance out the economic cooperation and engagement with India and China? What are the geopolitical challenges to Nepal, and more so as we are looking at to the investment environment? Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. And I also want to join others in thanking NICE and MitKat for organizing this seminar. And I was delighted to hear both Ambassador Ramprasad Subedi and Ambassador Simkhada. They're many, many old friends of mine, and greetings to everyone. So, the first point I want to make is Nepal underestimates its own achievements. Nepal has achieved in the last 7 or 8 decades what has taken hundreds of years in other countries. And I'm talking about the political changes, the political transformation, the inclusive democracy that is all enshrined in the new Nepalese constitution. And of course, greetings to all Nepalese on the Constitution Day. So a lot has been achieved domestically. Let me now turn to the external environment. Unfortunately, the external environment is not so conducive today. Ambassador Simkhada referred to COVID, climate change, Afghanistan. But, the way I look at it, there is a huge contestation going on for influence globally and especially in our part of the world between the United States and China. There is also for Nepal, since its 2 big neighbors are India and China, and the relationship between India and China is very fraught these days, as all of us know. This also impacts on Nepal. So the external situation is not so conducive. And if you look at, just a few years ago, these sort of Make in America programs, this pushback against globalization, tariffs going up in many countries. So while Nepal has domestic stability and security and is eager to attract investment, the international environment is not so positive. Now, coming specifically to US-China, if you look at the Indo-Pacific, the US withdrawal from Afghanistan, which has been referred to, so that vacuum is really now being filled in by China and Pakistan. Secondly, the US has started a new military alliance in the Indo-Pacific, which is, the US, Australia, and the United Kingdom, whereby Australia is going to be given nuclear submarines. And the Chinese have reacted very negatively to this. How does this affect Nepal? And in Nepal, you have all seen these huge debates between, whether Nepal should approve the Millennium Challenge Corporation projects of the United States. This is a $500 million grant project. And there is a very strong political view in Nepal that this is anti-China, that this is part of the Indo-Pacific strategy, which is aimed at containing China. Since China is a good friend of Nepal, Nepal should not do this. And Nepal, of course, is an important partner in the Belt and Road Initiative. Incidentally, the Belt and Road Initiative projects are all loan financed, whereas the American MCC project is a full grant. And I just hope that, this debate will reach some conclusion. To me, it seems that Nepal should benefit from, whichever sources it is able to benefit. And this is not I recall the old Arun 3 project 25 years ago. For various reasons, it was shelved then and it has only started now. So I just hope, that similar situations don't occur in Nepal again. The other caution I also want to bring in here, the impression this debate is giving to outsiders and to foreigners is that for Nepal, the most important relationship seems to be China. So Nepal is very mindful that we should not do anything that will bother China. And I'm not sure whether I don't think this is the correct impression, but this is the perception that people are having. And if you look at the projects under this Trans-Himalayan connectivity between Nepal and China, there are many projects, but don't forget the Himalayas. Don't forget the challenging geography, challenging geology. Reference has been made to climate change. So these projects require huge engineering skills and insurmountable resources. So I'm not so sure that you can bank on them that any time in the near future they are going to give you some dividends. Related to this, there is a new subgroup of South Asian countries that has been established by China, of which Nepal and other South Asian countries that are signatories to the Belt and Road Initiative are participants. Afghanistan is also a participant. Now, by very fact of participating in this initiative means that the next meeting of this project will have representatives of the Afghanistan regime, of the Taliban. So what is Nepal? How is Nepal going to react? So this is what I'm saying. Nepal is an independent sovereign country and needs to take these decisions in a sovereign manner rather than be led by somebody else. In terms of the investment climate in Nepal, as I said, I think domestically Nepal is ripe for investments. I do hope very much that Indian companies will look at Nepal. In the early 90s, there was a huge burst of investment in Nepal, and these companies, many of whose representatives are here, have done extremely well. They've remitted huge royalty and dividend payments. But new investment has not come in, and I think that really requires very in-depth analysis. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, sir. And that was really insightful, looking at the geopolitical perspective, the external politics, and now from external and internal politics, we come to brass tacks of business. And for that, we have people facilitating the businesses in Nepal. So, Mr. Shekhar Golcha, how does Nepal actually facilitate this ease of doing business? What is the ground situation and what are the major policy or government roadblocks that still come in the way of business development in Nepal, whether it's by domestic businesses, whether it's by Indian businesses or businesses from any other country? We'd really like to hear your thoughts on this.
Thank you, Sushilji. First of all, thanks to MitKat for organizing this program. I've been hearing all the really learned speakers, and it's really interesting to hear all of them. My fellow panelists and all the people who are joined in this program. Well, as many people in India have an impression, or globally, that Nepal, being such a small country, and about our economy being very fragile. But I would like to tell everyone that, we are probably extremely resilient economy. And I'll tell you why. If you see all the fundamentals of our economy, like, for example, balance of payment, thanks to the remittance we received from millions of Nepalese who are working abroad, our balance of payment is extremely positive. We are currently 9 months plus of reserves, and so that takes care, despite the problem that our balance of trade is in a pathetic state. But because there is no dearth of foreign currency, we don't have any issue on purchases of any of our raw materials or whatever we need. So that's been very positive. Our inflation, which is extremely connected to India, has been very positive, which is around 4 to 5% average. Even in terms of our employment, thanks again to the people working out, and there is the government data are showing that unemployment is not a major issue in Nepal. If you look at other data as well, in terms of how our economy is growing, we are, despite all the challenges, and I mentioned that we are a very resilient economy, and you think of the challenges we have gone through. We have gone through huge political changes, which is big, huge insurgencies. But despite the fact, our economy kept on growing on a positive note. Many countries do tend to fail when there is such a big political changes. There was a time when most of the manufacturing units in Nepal was closed because there was strikes. But despite all this, now I can say that in terms of labor relation, we are probably really getting much better. So there is other challenges also which we have faced in the past, like for example the earthquake, or blockades, or now COVID.
Right.
Despite all the problems, what we have seen is we have bounced back. We have bounced back bigger and stronger. With COVID, many economies are still reeling under it. But despite the situation, the World Bank figure says that we are going to be probably between 2 to 3% growth rate. And except for tourism, which is directly hit by COVID, most of our other sectors are showing very positive growth. That this completely shows the resilience of our economy, which is which has been there despite all the challenges we have overcome, all the challenges in the past. Having said this, the future, of course, one of the key challenge in our economy remains that we are a very high cost economy. And, and as Ambassador also mentioned, that the logistic cost is one of the biggest problems we have logistically, because 99% of our logistics comes through India, and, and the costs are extremely high. There's been certain measures to get the cost down. For example, most of our ICPs are now connected to rail from India, so that should bring the cost down. The private railway operators are allowed to operate now, so that is also bringing the cost down. But if you look at the other cost factors, like for example, the energy cost, compared to India, we are still higher. But from this year onwards, we should be surplus energy at least 9 months in a year. So that will bring the energy cost down. We are trying to convince the government that you must subsidize the industries to get the energy cost down, simply because it will help us bridge the gap of the trade, with the trade imbalance what we have. But if you also look at other factors, like for example the labor cost, of course, if you see the ILO report, it shows that our productivity, unfortunately, is only compared to all of South Asia, it's only Pakistan which is lower than us. Otherwise, our productivity is quite low. But having said this, it is the same Nepalese workers which are the most sought after labor anywhere in various Asian countries. We are the most sought after. So it is just that we need to fix few things here, for which we are trying. And because we are not lazy people, for sure, I think Indian Army, takes us, the British Army. I mean, obviously we are known for our, grit and endurance and our strength, and so we obviously need to fix few things up so that our productivity goes up in Nepal. Even if you take financial costs, there has been times when the interest costs have fluctuated wildly in Nepal, but in last 3-4 years, it is very competitive, even in international terms, where long-term borrowing is hovering around 7%. So that shows the strength of our economy, as I told you. But still, we are a high-cost economy. But having said this, we are improving in every aspects of it. If you look at ease of doing business, and it was mentioned before as well, between 190 countries, we're 94th, and we're not proud of this fact. And but as a local businessman, as a leader of the private sector in Nepal, we've been working very closely with the government to see that how ease of doing business can improve. And in this budget, a lot of irritants which the private sector has been addressed by the government. So, like for example, there were irritants on logistic. Like for example, if you are building a factory or a manufacturing, to getting a transmission line or roads, where was a challenge. The new budget tells us that the private sector can invest themselves, and 75% is going to be reimbursed instantly, which is a very investment-friendly sort of law. Another path-breaking things which are happening in Nepal is that if you are a large power consumer in the country, you can negotiate with another hydropower or a large producer, and you can only pay wheeling charges to to Nepal Electricity Authority and negotiate directly from a power producer. So these are path-breaking things which are happening in Nepal. Of course, this is not reflecting right now on our investments or FDI, but we feel that in times to come, this is going to reflect. Because if you look at our per capita income also, and our human HDI, and something which we are proud of, that our HDI, Human Development Index, has been phenomenal growth, despite all the inefficiencies we have, but HDI has grown very, very well. Even per capita income, 1150, we are getting into that sweet spot where consumption is really going to increase. And our per capita, and thanks to the remittance we have, it is not limited to only cities, and it is very, very widely spread out throughout the country. So the market, if you see the consumer markets as well, it is growing very, very fast. I can give you a few examples of the growth we're having. The automobile market in last 5 years have grown in Nepal more than 30% per annum.
Right.
Consumer electronics, more than 40%. So it just shows that things are really looking up, and because the per capita income is up, things are really looking up. And I feel and that all the the inefficiencies which we are working on it as a apex body, and lot has been done. And in coming times, we will make sure the logistic cost as well as other costs are going to come down in Nepal, and it will be an attractive destination for investment. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mr. Golcha. That's very
excuse me.
Yes.
Can I have to leave because 3:30 I have another program. So I just wanted to add 1 minute. One is right at the beginning, the general said Nepal is a crossroads of history. In fact, Nepal is a crossroads of history and geography. That has always been the case. So as a result, you don't have to worry, America has this interest, China has this interest. Because of our strategic location, all major powers are going to be interested in what happens in Nepal. The challenge for India and Nepal is because whatever happens elsewhere in the world, we need to coordinate our policies, we need to coordinate our economies, and that I think is very important. Second, now Ambassador Ray talked about the trans-Himalayan dimension. In fact, one of the first arguments of the trans-Himalayan connectivity is in my book called Nepal, India, China, Relations in the 21st Century. Now, this is what I'm talking about, transformative thinking. In the sense that it is only in the longer term that, in fact, Nepal as a high-cost economy with problems of connectivity will obviously look for alternatives if the natural connectivity with India does not work. So as a result, the important thing is when this Trans-Himalayan Railway idea came up, in fact, I think it was Ram Madhavji who came to Kathmandu to talk about this, and he said, Nepal should take a policy of look south. I said, Nepal already has a policy of look south. The only thing is if we could have arranged to build in 10 places a little better railway connection in the plain areas of Nepal and India. In fact, this necessity to go across the Trans-Himalayas 4,000 kilometers away wouldn't be there. So as a result, the second thing is we need to, as I said right at the beginning, that we need to explore ways for greater integration of our economies so that they become more efficient and they also become more beneficial for both sides. Now, finally, the basic legislative, regulatory, and institutional arrangements to invite foreign investment and good business is already here. The Constitution has provided the basic framework for stability. There are always going to be problems of politics anywhere in the world. There are always going to be some ups and downs, just like we have the Ford leaving India, because the nature of the markets are very different. But the good thing about India and Nepal is, in fact, we have so many things similarities that if we can explore both these incremental areas of consumption that Gulsaji talked about, the vehicles and so on one side, but also since I see that a lieutenant general is heading the MitKat, that in fact you also have to think about a very transformative future. And absolutely right, Ambassador Ray is right. AUKUS that has just happened, came as a big surprise to many. But way back in 2016, when Brexit was happening, in fact, before Brexit happened, I had argued that, look, Brexit has a larger implication than simple this sovereignty issue of British. And as a result, yes, AUKUS is in fact a reflection of where this region is heading. And that is where the importance of India-Nepal relations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. And it was great having you. And I know you have to rush for another engagement, but it was good to have you. And thanks, Mr. Shekhar, also for your very encouraging comments about business environment in Nepal. But now, again, I would like to go back to the practitioners of business. And one of the issues that has come up is related to earthquakes and climate and natural disasters. So, Mr. Karan Chaudhary, you head a conglomerate which does businesses in over 100 fields. And that's really complicated and a complex business environment. How does your business conglomerate and your various interests manage the climate and the natural disaster related risks in Nepal? We'd like to hear from you, sir.
Thank you very much, Colonel Pradhan. Thank you, first of all, for MitKat and the whole NICE team for inviting me on this panel. Hearing all the ambassadors, General Sharma, Mr. Subedi, Ambassador Ray, everyone is such, I'm very privileged and honored to actually be a part of this panel. Rather than a panel, I would just love to hear everyone around. But adding to it, to the question which you just said, how earthquake and everything is taking Nepal's business sector, I say it is a roller coaster ride for me every day, starting from the time I joined business way back, a decade back. But now I see each and every day is more of a chaos management for me. I don't know, a lot of people from the military here can relate. It's more of handling the nitty-gritty issues, coming up and solving problems every day, which I come across. Earthquake was a part which costed Nepal about $7 billion in terms of the total impact on economy. But here, every day we face such issues, and it's not only in Nepal, it's throughout the globe. Such issues have been coming here and there. Earthquake was one big eye-opener for me as an entrepreneur in the company, that we should be prepared for the inevitable. But that made us so very easy and so very prepared for the COVID and many more crises which we face every day throughout the year. Now, I think in terms of COVID, I am much more prepared because during the earthquake, it was something which for our century, it was very new, and more handling it was more on ground. Field management and man management were more important, because that time it made us realize that business was secondary. First, it was human lives.